Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to Ireland Bound. Uh, you're going to unfortunately have to watch me speak through this whole entire thing because on this particular one, um, the pictures that for my aunts and uncles, I really don't have because most of them died before I really, was taking a lot of pictures. I've got a few of one of my aunts, but not many. And my dad's brother and his other two sisters, I remember seeing pictures of them like when I was little, and there's like, pictures like about this big. But, like I said, it just, at the time that they were all alive, I really didn't take that many pictures of them. I mean, I knew them, okay? I knew all of them because family get togethers and all that. And I heard tons of stories from all of them, but uh, like I said, I don't have pictures of them like on my mom's side of the family. I mean, my mom's side of the family, there are so many pictures. So this one is going to be pretty much picture free, but I wanted to talk a little bit about my dad's siblings because, of course, my mom and her brother, I spent so much time with them because basically basically they needed each other there in their later lives. I mean, my mom had lost her husband, my dad, and eventually, of course, my uncle had lost his last wife. She had passed away, and so they kind of clung to each other more, and we hung out more. So I'm going to tell you the siblings. First off, Aunt Gladys. This was my dad's oldest sister. She was born 1913. I don't know um, the exact day because I just don't have that research up on her yet. But she died, or she was born 1913. She was the oldest born, and strangely enough, she was the last one to die. It runs in my mind she died somewhere around 2005. Firstborn last to go. It was kind of almost prophetic because my dad was the last born but the first to go. Uh, you know, you know how those things work. The next one born was my Aunt Vera. She was born in 1915. Now I do know her date. Uh, my Aunt Vera, her name was Vera Grace. She was born on June the 18th. Of course, like I said, 1915. And there goes my fuzzy boy. This is Yosemite. If he ever gives you a good look at his face, he's got long white whiskers. Reminds me of Yosemite Sam, the cartoon character. Uh, Such a nice little distraction, isn't he? Okay, so anyways, my Aunt Vera, she was actually my dad's favorite sister. Uh, they were really close to each other, and they hung out a lot. In fact, uh, growing up, Aunt Vera was like my substitute grandmother because, of course, my grandma, which I will discuss more later, my grandma Garrett, she died when I was about 4. Uh, so I never really got to know her. And so Aunt Vera sort of became my surrogate grandmother for that side of the family. Going over there, I mean, I loved her to death. I loved her about as much as my dad did because we always hung out. She'd play cards with me. She had a card shuffler, and I learned to use her card shuffler, and uh, it was fun. Actually, I need to back up a little bit because I should also mention that my Aunt Gladys, she got married. She married a man named Foy Curry. That's Foy, Foy Curry. Uh, I'm not sure when they got married, but because, like I said, I haven't actually looked into hers too much. But they got married and they had 2 daughters. Um, oh my word, I can't pull up either one. Wanda Joy, that was one of the girls, and She was the oldest one, if I remember right. And they also had another daughter, and I can't think of her name right now. But I think I know Wanda has passed away. I'm not sure about the other one. I think she has too. But they like I said, that was Aunt Gladys. She's the oldest one. She married a man named Foy. Uh, I know, strange names, right? Some of those older names, they can get a little bit strange. And of course, like I said, get back to my Aunt Vera, she was the second born child. She, my grandparents, very strangely enough, they had like the girls first and they had the boys. So I'm giving you all the girls first. So, anyways, Aunt Vera, uh, she, like I said, she was my dad's favorite. They were really close to each other, and I spent a lot of time over there. Um, Aunt Vera's first husband, I believe his name was William Fields, and that's who she had her kids by. I believe he was about 20 years older than her. A big age difference now. Back then, it's wasn't too uncommon. But there was, like I said, there was a big age difference in them. But she gave him, I want to say it was 4 or 5 kids. I think it was 5 kids. The oldest one, Patsy, was about 10 years older than my dad. My dad was 10 when she was born. Well, no, she wasn't 10 years older. She was 10 years younger. I got to get my directions flipped back. Yeah, she was 10 years younger. My dad was 10 years old whenever she was born. And so, um, he basically he had a niece at the age of 10. Uh, Vera had a daughter named her Vera Lee. Um, that's Kingsford. Got a little jealous. His brother got some attention, so he had to make an appearance. But anyways, I know she had a daughter named Vera Lee. There was a son named Paul. Um, and I'm having trouble pulling up the other two daughters. Vera Lee is the one that I'm most familiar with. Patsy actually died before I was born. She died, if I remember right, I think she had cancer. And so I never got to meet her. And so Vera Lee was the one that I knew grew. I didn't exactly grow up with her, but I grew up knowing who she was. Actually, her youngest daughter was close to my age. Now, remember, on my dad's side of the family, I discussed that my dad was born in 1921, so he was a lot older than me, which means that all my first cousins were a lot older than me. I had to get to second cousins before I found cousins my age. In a few cases, a few third cousins. But anyway, so yeah, like I said, my Aunt Vera, she had, if I remember right, I think she had 5 children. Um, I of course gave you the names of the 3 I could think of, and for whatever reason, I'm not pulling up the others. Uh, like I said, it just the Paul and Vera Lee, they were the ones that I was around the most, and they were the ones I spent the most time with. So it's, um, I got to know them a little bit better. Um, Aunt Vera was actually, she was the second one to pass away after my dad died. Um, it was my dad, he died in 93, and Vera Lee, or excuse me, Aunt Vera, she passed away, um, I want to say it was around 2000. It might have been 2001. Somewhere in that general area. She passed away. She had a lot of health problems. I know she had scoliosis, the curvature of the spine, that makes you kind of bent over and stooped and having trouble standing up unless you have like a special back brace on to pull your spine back into alignment. So, she had that, and there's a couple of other things. But like I said, she definitely she was my favorite. The next born, was Ray. Uh, and oh my word, she was born 1917, and I know her date because her and my dad were born in the same month. She was born the third day of April, and when he said that when she was real little, she had trouble saying third, and it came out turd. She was born the third day April. A lot of little kids they have speech impediments at young ages and have problems saying certain words. So I mean, it wasn't anything against her. It's just the little kids, and of course, you know how siblings are. They don't let anybody forget that. So it was something, my whole life that I heard she was the third day of April. So that's the reason why I know hers. That and the fact that she was born the same month as my dad. So like I said, those two I know simply for the fact that Aunt Vera was my dad's favorite, and ended with her little kid, one of my cats, her little kid speech impediment. So but anyways, like I said, I spent a lot of time with her. Not as much as with Aunt Vera. Oh, cats. The two brothers, the ones that was here and that was here, they they decided to have a little fight around my tripod. Bad boys. So anyways, so I did spend quite a bit of time over there. The family joke was that Ananda was vaccinated with a phonograph needle when she was little. Once she got talking, it was hard to get a word in edgewise because somehow she learned to breathe and talk at the same time. So she'd get going and you couldn't stop her. you know, uh, I know her husband, um, he was my Uncle BF. Do not ask me what BF stands for because nobody in the family knew. All they knew was B and F, so he was Uncle BF. I don't know if it was like Bert or Bart or Bernard or whatever, but whatever it was, pretty much the secret went to the grave with him. Ananda was born in 1917. Like I said, she was the third daughter, and being being the basically the middle child of five, uh, she had middle child syndrome. But she was wonderful. She was such a sweet little thing. I remember one time she had to have her hip replaced, and of course we went up to the hospital to visit her. She was laying in the bed, and all of a sudden the sheets and blankets rose up, then it went back down, and a little bit of talking rose up, then it went back down. And of course I was a little kid, and I kept noticing it. She looked at me and she goes, "My leg's breathing." And I looked at her and it's like, "What?" She goes, "My leg's breathing." She says, "Come here." And she brought me over to the other side and she kind of pulled the cover up. She says, "They're doing this so that way I'll exercise my leg." And it was a little mechanism. This was back in the 80s. This was a mechanism to pull the leg up so that way the knee and the leg would bend and then it would lower it back down. And it would do that ever so often. It was the type of therapy that they had started and that they were doing back then. So, uh, like I said, it was so funny to watch that. The leg go up and the leg go back down. But like I said, she was a sweetheart. She liked to talk. Now, technically, I know I said five kids, but what I need to say is five living kids because there was also at this point after Ananda was born, there was a little girl born. She was named Vivian. Vivian did not live past infancy. I think, if I remember right, I think she only lived like a couple of weeks. Uh, Back then, that was actually almost kind of a common thing that a little one would die, because I mean, they didn't have the health care back then, and sometimes, women didn't get the nutrition they needed to support a child. Uh, there's other reasons too, but I'm going to save that for another story for another day. That is, like I said, that's a different story. Um, so, anyways, there was Vivian, but she died in infancy, and so uh, I've seen her grave. I've seen her little headstone. She was just a teeny tiny little thing. So she passed away. Um, but and I need to go back. I know I'm jumping all over the place. I need to go back to Aninda for a moment. She was the second one to die. My dad, like I said, he was the youngest one, but he was the first one to go. Then Aunt Vera. And what was really strange was it was like a week later, and Aunt Linda passed away. So it was like Aunt Vera a week later, Aunt Linda. I remember telling my bosses, and I looked at them, and I told her, it's like, I'm sorry. I said, I know it's the second time in just a short time that I'm asking off for a funeral, but it's like, she was old. She was old, and she was in bad health. So like I said, it's just, and I remember they both died in October because one died right before my birthday, and one died right after my birthday. Yes, that was a really hard year with that one because it's, with Aunt Vera being my favorite one, it was really hard losing her that close to my birthday. Um, but like I said, Aunt Vera and Inda. Um, and of course, like I mentioned, there was little Vivian. She died in infancy, so she was one that I heard about but never, you know, got to meet because of that. Uh, all the four girls, they were the only girls that were born. Uh, Next came Uncle Darwin. It was Miles Darwin Garrett, if I remember right. He was born in 1919. Uh, he was the first male child born, and of course he got the recognition of being the first male child born. Uh, he ended up marrying Juanita Walker, I believe was her name. I believe that, yeah, I think she was one of the Walkers. In my dad's hometown, the Everman, Rendon, Kennedale area, uh, there was like about three, four major families in the area. There was the Williams, the Walkers, the Wilsons, and the Garretts. Uh, if you had one of those last names, somewhere along the line, someone was related to someone else. Uh, it was kind of hard to escape. So there, like I said, there was all of them. Um, our Uncle Darwin, he married Juanita. Everyone called her Nita. Uh, oh, I I know I'm jumping all over the place. I mentioned the kids that were born. Aunt Inda, she had three or four. I know she had three children. No, she had four children. She had one that died in infancy also. And I can't. Judy was one of her daughters, and I don't remember meeting the other two. I probably did. I know she had one boy, uh, but Judy was one that I knew the most and spent the most time around. Like I said, she had three living, and I believe there was one that died. But she had her own little group of grandkids and kids and stuff. Uncle Darwin and Aunt Nita, they had two boys. There was David, who was the older one, and there was Lester, who was a little bit younger. Actually, Lester was the youngest um, grandchild before I came along. Uh, he had gotten to hold the distinction of being the youngest for 28 years before my dad had me, my dad and my mom. So I know Lester has passed away. He died, I want to say it was either 3 or 4 years ago. Um, I remember, I think it was his daughter Candy. Candy was one of those second cousins that was my age. Uh, Boy, leave my tripod alone. Don't have cats fighting over it, but now I've got a cat wanting to make love. He's sitting here just kissing all over this thing. And I wish he'd leave it alone. Hey, Kingsford, go away. Anyways, I know my voice is sounding a little gravelly right now. I think it's because I got wind blowing on me. It's graveling up my voice. I don't know what to do with this cat. I really don't. Anyway, so back to the stories. Um, like I said, Uncle Darwin, he was born 1919. He was the third one to die. He died, or fourth one, excuse me. But I will lay out their deaths here in just a moment, because the last four, it was kind of ironic and funny how they all passed. But like I said, I'll get to that in a moment. Anyways, he had two sons. David was the oldest. David had two kids. I know that his daughter Patsy passed away. Not little Patricia. Everyone called her Pat. She passed away here a couple of years ago. I had, since she was a bit older than me, I hadn't really spent a lot of time around her when I was a kid. But when we became an adult and started doing Facebook, I actually started talking to her a lot more and got to know her better, and found out I really liked her. Of course, I was finally getting to know her, but she, like I said, she passed away. She had cancer, if I remember right. She actually passed away about the same time that her grandmother did. It's like her grandmother and then her. So um, they both passed away just a few years ago. Um, but Uncle Darwin and Aunt Nina, they had a long marriage together. In his last few years, my Uncle Darwin began to develop dementia, and had a lot of the problems that the dementia people do. He couldn't remember things, couldn't remember how to get to certain areas. He actually started having these problems before my dad passed away. He there was a lot of things he didn't understand. He was confused by. But what was really kind of sad, at my dad's funeral, Darwin, Uncle Darwin, he, excuse me, that wind's really getting me right now. It's blowing stuff at me. Anyways, Uncle Darwin, he started crying, and I remember I reached over and I took his hand and said, "Uncle Darwin," I said, "What's wrong?" And he looked at me and he goes, "He was the youngest. Said he shouldn't have died." He says, "The youngest one should not be the first one to die." Of course, talking about my dad. And it really upset him, because all the things that he could not remember, he did remember my dad being the youngest. He could remember my dad, that he was at my dad's funeral, and I know probably after the funeral the dementia took back over and he didn't think of it again. But still, for that time, that little space of time there, it hurt. It really did, that he could remember Daddy being the youngest one, and that Daddy was now gone, and that he was at his baby brother's funeral. Like I said, it was a bit heartbreaking, but at the same time, it was almost kind of a relief to know that the dementia would take back over, and that he wouldn't think about it. That it wasn't something that his mind would dwell on, that he was released from that thought and that memory. Um, like I said, it was, it was heartbreaking, but at the same time, for that short period of time, he knew and he understood his baby brother was gone, which was almost kind of ironic because when they were little, he and Daddy did not get along. Uh, my Uncle Darwin was about 2.5 when my dad was born, and when he was born and he went in to, of course, see the new baby, he looked at my dad. He goes, "What's that?" Look at Grandma. She goes, "Well, this is your new baby brother. This is Lloyd." And he goes, "That's your baby?" She said, "Yes, says, that's our baby." Says, "He belongs to the family." And he looked at my grandmother and he says, "You're not my mother anymore." He turns and walks out of the room. And it kind of set up almost a love hate relationship between the two of them. When they were younger, he did not like my dad at all. He did not like being displaced. I mean, 2.5 years old, he was managed to hold on to this idea that he had been the youngest and he was no longer the youngest. That he had been displaced by this little bundle that grew up to be a little brother. Um, there was another baby, though, after my dad, and his name was Freddie. Freddie was born, and like Vivian, he only lived for a few days, and Freddie passed away. And even with having one that was younger, it didn't change Uncle Darwin's feelings towards my dad. He still did not like my dad. Uh, they managed to grow out of it somewhat when they got older. I mean, they were able to like be at family functions and talk to each other and stuff, and as my dad would say, pass and repass without any problems. But during those young years, during the growing up years, it was hard on my dad because when your older brother hates you that much, it's really hard. Um, so it like I said, it's just what you grow up with. It's the things that you experience, and he did not like no longer being the baby of the family. Now there was another pregnancy after Freddie. Uh, my grandmother had gotten pregnant again. This was technically her 8th child. Um, there was an incident that happened. That's for another story. But the child ended up miscarrying and never even made it to being a full infant. So she lost that one when it was tiny. So you know, when I say my dad was the youngest, usually I say he was the youngest of 5 living kids. Because, of course, there was the 2 named ones and then the one who, didn't even make it out of the womb. So that's basically my dad's siblings. That's all of them. Uh, all of them that I have been told about. And truthfully, I think that's just all of them. Um, anyways, getting back to my aunts and my uncles. Now, my dad died in '93. And like I said, he was the youngest living one, of course, but he was the first one to go. Um, and then the other 4 actually died within 8 months of each other. Like I said, Aunt Vera was the next one to go. She died in October, and then Aunt Vera, then Aunt Enda, she died a couple weeks later, and then I can't remember whether it was right before Christmas or right after Christmas that Uncle Darwin passed away. So it's like, it was like boom, boom, boom. And then, like I said, it was several months later, it was in the spring, that Aunt Gladys passed away. And I remember when it was all happening, of course, like I said, Vera died, Inda died. And I, of course, had to ask my boss off for Uncle Darwin's funeral. And I remember when Aunt Gladys died, I told my boss, it's like, okay, it's like all of my dad's siblings, this is all of his brothers and sisters. I said, they're all gone now. It's like, I said, right at the moment, I said, my mom's brother is doing pretty good. So I said, I shouldn't need to ask off for a funeral for a while. So it's, like I said, they had all passed away. Um, and Uncle Foy, he had died before my dad had. Of course, he was just a brother-in-law. So, there wasn't any thoughts or need of him. And uh, my Aunt Vera, her first husband had passed away. She actually was married a second time, and the second husband passed away. And then she got married a third time, and the third husband passed away. Uncle John, her third one, is the only one that I actually knew. He was the only one that was alive when I was born. The other two died before I was ever born. So Uncle John was the only one that I ever knew, and he passed away when I was still a kid. So she had lost all her husbands. So Uncle Foy, all of Aunt Vera's husbands had passed away. So that all that left was, in the ways of the in-laws, was Uncle Darwin's wife, Aunt Nita, and Enda's husband, BF, and of course my mom. So that just, like I said, left two in-laws, and it was a few years before either one of them passed away. They got a bit older before they were gone. But yeah, that was my dad's siblings. Um, Pretty much in order. I know I kept jumping back and forth there. It's just I would remember something I'd want to say, and it's like, okay, I need to go back and get that pulled in there. So, anyways, I hope it's not too confusing. I just, like I said, I'll see if I can go online and find some pictures of all of them. And in the meantime, for those who maybe this is your first time watching, I need to ask y'all to do something. There's a little red subscribe button. I need you to go down there. I need you to hit that. It automatically should put it on all, so that way you can get everything that I post. Also, too, don't forget, give me a thumbs up. That way, YouTube knows that you've enjoyed my video, and I know that you've seen it and that you've enjoyed it too. Maybe found out a little something, maybe just enjoyed the stories. Also, too, leave a comment. If you're a relative and you're like, oh hey, do you know anything more on this one, or maybe you're someone and you know a little bit more on one of my relatives, because you're one of my cousins that I haven't actually gotten to either talk to in a long time or have ever met. Like I said, feel free to leave me a message, because I wouldn't mind talking to anybody. So, like I said, subscribe, like, comment, and feel free to share. Uh, you know, Share it so that way you, maybe if you're one of my relatives, you have a copy of some of this stuff too. Um, there are more stories, but I didn't want to take up that much time because, like I said, I spent many, 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 many hours sitting there listening to my dad and all of his siblings at different times, telling stories and sharing stuff and talking about things. And there are so many stories. Oh my word. It's like I might not have pictures, but I have a lot of stories on that part of the family. He's back. Kitty Love is making love to my stand again. But anyways, like I said, like, comment, subscribe, leave a message, share if you feel like it, and I will talk to y'all later.